It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine, indeed. Welcome back to the show, your weekly recap of everything Star Wars and Lucasfilm. I'm here again, Brian Cameron, with my co-host, Paul Naylor. How are you, Paul?
Good evening. Well, you say good evening. Good morning, Brian. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very, very good. How's your week been?
Pretty busy. Been doing a bit of charity work. I don't like to talk about charity work, but I've been doing some charity work, but it's all been good.
I'm still in charge of Fantatrax.com as Mr. Newball's abandoned us for his holiday. And so news reporting I'll be late because I like to work late in an evening. But the news is still popping up there each and every day, so keep checking us out on a daily basis. We appreciate everybody that visits the site and reads the news, and it's been a pretty busy news week as well.
Certainly has.
Do you want to go through what we're going to be covering on the show this week?
Let's go for it.
First up, we'll be talking about John Cassaday and Peter Renaday, who sadly both passed away this week. John Cassaday, of course, the comic book artist, and Peter was the voice of Exar Kun in Dark Lords of the Sith audio drama.
And around the same time, sadly, we lost James Earl Jones, obviously known to us as the voice of Darth Vader, but who had an illustrious career over many, many decades and will be greatly missed.
We'll be celebrating his life as well, of course, and we'll be introducing our new segment From the Vault. And we'll have a little clip behind the scenes into the voice of Darth Vader.
It's been a good week for collectors with the Hasbro Pulse Con 2024. We'll be going through the Star Wars reveals and some pretty good and exciting products coming soon.
And Ewan McGregor, of course, picked up his star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. We'll be discussing that and a few interesting comments he made whilst promoting the event as well.
And then over in Jabba's court, we'll be looking at whether or not certain actors and likenesses should be resurrected in the light of the problems that we're currently experiencing around Peter Cushing.
And last in this week's news, we'll be checking out the spooky Star Wars collection from RSVLTS. I'm supporting one of their shirts tonight, so we'll be checking what you can get to wear for this Halloween if you're not dressing up. And we'll get stuck straight into the news, Paul, I think.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So first up, the very sad news that John Cassaday has passed away at the very young age, 52. He'll be best known to Star Wars fans for having been the artist on the Jason Aaron Star Wars main license series from Marvel, and was there, when Star Wars comics returned to Marvel, which was a huge thing, and his art led the way and he's going to be very sadly missed. And of course, he had a massive impact as well across the whole comic book industry as well, Paul.
Yeah, definitely. I've been a collector of comics back in the day when Star Wars Weekly first came out in '78. Yeah, when this relaunched, when would it have been? About 2012, 11, 12?
2012 on the top of my head, yeah.
Yeah. When this, I mean, this is the image you've got on screen there. That was the cover of issue 1.
Yeah.
There were variants, obviously, as well, but that was the main cover. Loved his work. Absolutely fantastic, and such a shock to lose him at such a relatively young age as well, 52. When you're in our ballpark, Brian, that's a young age, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, and he was obviously involved in all sorts of other big sort of projects such as X-Men, etc.
Yeah,
But
X-Men America was, he was involved in with Marvel. He had his own licenses as well, and he sort of moved in and did some stuff on TV as well.
Yeah, such a shame, a huge loss to comic art for all these different properties that he worked within. But to us, obviously, Star Wars, he was instrumental in sort of breathing new life into Marvel and its Star Wars connection.
Yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to pick up some of the Star Wars comics now with the time periods past, but if you want to check out some of John's work, you can get the Star Wars by Jason Aaron collection, great big, huge hardback of all their work together, the whole Jason Aaron run, and you'll get all of John Cassaday's work in there as well. So that's a great book to pick up if you're into your comics and you want to see some of John's pretty much iconic work when it returned to the Star Wars license.
They really worked very well together, didn't they? Yeah.
They did, yeah. They created something special, and it reinvigorated Star Wars. I was very upset to see Dark Horse lose the license, because Dark Horse had some huge hits and some huge misses over the years. They took big risks, and they gave us some really interesting and exciting stuff over the years. And I kind of wanted to see what they could do with a completely clean slate, with a new canon. And obviously they didn't get that opportunity. And it makes sense for Disney owning Marvel to bring it in-house, in effect.
I guess. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Going way back to the Dark Horse Comics time period of comics, they of course had the Tales of the Jedi series, and as part of that they had Dark Lords of the Sith, introduced some real legends and characters, well, literally legends now in canon, but real legends of characters, and one of them was Exar Kun, the Dark Lord of the Sith in that time period, and so popular were the comics back then that they got audio drama adaptations, and Peter Renaday provided the voice to that character as well. We may know him better as Splinter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series. That was his contribution to Star Wars.
So for me, I only really knew of him as Splinter. Wasn't really into audio adaptations, but very recognizable voice, but a reasonably good innings, as they would say, 89. Sad to say.
And of course, as well, the one that probably really stole the headlines this week globally, such a renowned character.
James Earl Jones. I mean, yes, he was the voice of Darth Vader, and that will always be my main connection to James Earl Jones. But over the years, various things that I've seen him in. I loved him in Coming to America as the King. So he was absolutely amazing in that. And that was sort of like there were some lines in that were very Darth Vader-esque, which were brilliant. But also for many of our younger viewers, they're probably their first sort of experience of James Earl Jones would have been for his role in The Lion King, because I'm sure a lot of them would have seen that before they saw Star Wars when they were growing up. Powerful voice, a booming voice, an instantly recognizable voice. 93, a good age. And I believe he was still working on Star Wars voiceovers. I'm right in thinking he did Rogue One.
Yep,
I think he was Vader for.
Yeah. And
That may have been the last time. You might know different, Brian, but I think
I'm
that
not
might
sure. Have been. He did work on the animation as well. I'm not sure time period that
yeah.
into. Of course, he didn't contribute to Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he gave permission for them to use AI technology to
play
a lot of the recordings they already had from his work, and to create the lines for Darth Vader for that series.
Which kind of touches on what we'll be talking on later about using people's likenesses, but with using the permission to sort of effectively use his voice by taking little bits here, bits there, and reworking it. I thought it worked well in Kenobi. You would have thought that he was actually, delivering those lines, so it did work well. He was quite a character. The one clip that obviously has been cropping up a lot lately is the one of him on The Big Bang Theory. Couple of instances on that show. One with Sheldon, and then another one playing Knock and Run. And I believe, from what I saw, that was the first time that he actually met Carrie in person after all those years. So that must have been nice for the two of them to have actually had some time together. And I think she lovingly referred to him as Dad. So that was good.
And that was the interesting thing about him as well, and that obviously he's providing the voice, so he's in a studio doing the voice, he's not on set. So, his meetings with the other people that worked in Star Wars would have been accidental or at events or in other productions.
He rather graciously sort of referred to his contribution as a special effect rather than a true performance, which I think that's just him being very modest, because without the combination of what Dave Prowse did and what James Earl Jones did, and the likes of Bob Anderson and other people that contributed to the role, they all did their part to bring Darth Vader to life.
And of course, he didn't take credit for the voice in A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back. He didn't actually get a credit for providing the voice until 1983's Return of the Jedi.
Is that right? Is that when they finally added it to the Wow.
I think it was well known and well accepted that he was the voice. He just he didn't want the credit for it. And that probably says something a lot about the man. He was very positive with regards to what David Prowse brought to the role.
Well, he insisted that David Prowse was Darth Vader, didn't he? Yeah.
And of course, George Lucas as well. He spoke out on the loss as well, and about how for nearly half a century he was Darth Vader, but the secret is that he was such a beautiful human being.
Yeah. What a guy, top bloke.
Yeah. We of course we've got a new segment on the show that we're calling From the Vault, and we've got a chance to play a little clip from the documentary Empire of Dreams as well, from back in 2004, where they explore a little bit into the voice and why they went with James Earl Jones. So we can check that out just now, Paul.
Okay.
Can we? Is it going to work?
For Darth Vader was another challenge.
And action!
Lucas had never intended to use the on-set vocal performance of David Prowse.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
I can still hear David Prowse's accent in the Darth Vader mask, muffled, because he would do the real dialogue. He's trying to curse Carrie Fisher or something.
I
don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic...
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
It was hilarious and terrifying at the same time, because we didn't know what Darth sounded like. That was the first time we heard him. We're like, is that it? Is it going to be some Scottish guy, or what is this?
Prowse's voice would later be replaced with a more menacing performance, provided by classically trained stage and film actor James Earl Jones.
George had hired David Prowse, but he said he wanted a so-called darker voice, and not in terms of ethnic, but in terms of timbre. And the rumor is that he thought of Orson Welles, and then probably thought that Orson might be too recognizable. So what he ends up is picking a voice that was born in Mississippi, raised in Michigan, and was a stutterer. And that happened to be my voice.
I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away!
Paul, would it have worked with David Prowse as the voice of Darth Vader?
Yeah. I'm more concerned that that gentleman thought that was a Scottish accent.
I know, I could have got the role.
Would it have worked? Let's be honest, probably not. The Bristolian accent isn't the most menacing. So maybe they definitely did the right thing, didn't they? Let's be honest. It did need that sort of deep baritone kind of voice to go along with that costume. And you know, it's iconic. The word iconic gets bounded around too easily these days, but in this instance, quite correct. That is iconic stuff. Interestingly, when I was looking at stuff the other day about around this time, a Green Cross Codeman advert came up. It must have been one of the very early ones. They dubbed Dave Prowse on that as well. So the poor guy just can't cut a break. You just weren't destined ever to hear Dave Prowse's voice. Eventually we did. I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah. I can't imagine the voice being anyone else other than James Earl Jones now. We've had it for over 40 years. He literally is the voice of Vader.
Yeah. I mean, in the audio dramas, was it Brock Peters? I think it was a guy called Brock Peters that did Vader. Yeah. And it wasn't a bad sort of secondary voice, shall we say. But yeah, to all intents and purposes, it's always going to be James Earl Jones. Do you think then going forward that as and when Vader pops up in any future film or TV work, that because the family, the estate or whatever, or it might have even been James Earl Jones at the time himself saying it was okay to do so, do you think that deal would be sort of moving forward as well, not just for around the time that it was taken?
It's an interesting one. I don't know. It depends how much and how involved the character of Vader is going to be in any other future project. I think that's probably unclear. I think if it's going to be a very major role, you almost are at the point where you would want to recast the voice. If it's more of a minor role with just a few lines, you could probably do it in the same way that you have done for the Obi-Wan series.
I suppose they could get away with it by doing a little bit at the start where he has to take his voice box down to PC World or whatever to get it refurbed. So they lend him something else. And then, I don't know, we could have, whoever doing his voice. And then right at the end, oh, your voice box is ready, Mr. Vader. Thank you very much. Yeah. Back to normal.
I think we are kind of at that juncture where if you were to move forward, then you were going to have Luke, Leia, Han, you were going to have Vader in it.
Yeah.
You're effectively recasting everybody.
Yes, true.
And I think that is a little bit easier. I think if you're doing one or two lines with the character of Vader, you can get away with maybe the way they did in Obi-Wan, which I thought was done very, very well. I wouldn't have known it was done with AI technology unless they had kind of wholly admitted that that's what they did. And I don't have an issue with AI technology being used when it's used appropriately and with the appropriate consents, and someone's being paid. I think I have more of the issue when it's being used to avoid having to pay someone. But yeah, I kind of think we're probably at the junction in time where if we were to dip back into the original trilogy timeline, you're looking at recasting everybody. And I think it would be more acceptable to recast the voice of Vader at that time. It would be odd, but it would also be odd to see a different Han, Luke, Leia. So we kind of have to get over ourselves. And I think if you market it right and you're quite open and you show a lot of the characters, how they're going to look, how they're going to sound, lots of clips, promote it in the right way, you can get over that initial shock. So you're not in the cinema being dragged out of a scene because that's not Han or that's not Leia or that's not Vader. So
I think that's something that we'll probably delve into in the future when, you know, as and when anything gets hinted at, that might arise. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate because everybody's going to have ideas out there as to who should play who. It's an interesting prospect, and I think we're going to have to, if we are fans of that particular timeline and we want to see more adventures of Han, Luke, and Leia, we're going to have to accept recasting.
It's a little bit like what they're going through with Harry Potter at the moment, I guess. They're still going for British kids aged 9 to 11, I think. But it's going to be unknowns. It's going to be people we don't know. And they're probably going to look and sound be completely different from the original characters. I think...
and it'll be interesting to see how like the adult characters in Harry Potter are treated, whether they're given the same sort of mannerisms and the way that the character actually is portrayed on the screen, or whether we'll get a softer version of Hagrid, a more aggressive version of Hagrid, somebody that is as gigantic as they portrayed that character as. Who knows? And I suppose the way that series is received will also be something that the people over at Star Wars, the productions for Star Wars, will be looking at with some great interest, because if that doesn't work for Harry Potter, they'll be thinking, well, if that's how that's been received, how would recasting Han, Luke, and Leia be received?
It's a big ask, because you're going into the Harry Potter series with a commitment for 7 series, effectively, per book. So if it doesn't work from the off, what do you do? You know, it's that's a difficult quandary.
Well, and also, people have accidents, people pass away at very young ages. You could get sort of 4 films into Harry Potter or whatever, 4 seasons into it, and whoever's been cast as Harry could get knocked over by a bus. It's not an exact science, is it?
No. And so I'm kind of the opinion you can bring someone else in to do the voice of Darth Vader, but they have to do it in their own way. They can't. You can't pretend to be James Earl Jones. He was unique. He brought his own uniqueness to that character, and we should celebrate what he brought to that character. But I think we're all at some point going to have to accept and recognise that all the characters that we love are going to get recast at some point.
I have heard rumours that if they want to go with something that's sort of Bristolian, like Dave Prowse, Matt Booker from Fantatrax is in the frame. So there's every likelihood that Matt Booker could be the next Vader. You heard it here first.
That would be controversial, definitely.
At best.
I think that's it for this edition of From the Vault. Of course, From the Vault's part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all the latest Star Wars news, streaming every Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York. And we also release it as a separate video over on Fantatrax TV. You'll find it on YouTube. So back to the news, Paul. it's been a big week for collectors.
Certainly has.
You're a
Yeah.
Hasbro Black Series guy, so I'm sure you can tell us all about what's been going on at Hasbro Pulse Con.
I'll do my best. So this happened earlier in the week. So there's lots of different sections to Hasbro Pulse, including things such as Transformers and G.I. Joe. But obviously the thing that we're all interested in is Star Wars. Prince Zizor, or Zizor as I called him back in the day. What an amazing release this was. I mean, Brian, were you a fan of Heir to the Empire and all stuff that came out around that time?
Yeah, Shadows of the Empire was the big thing, the multimedia.
Sorry, yeah, Shadows of the Empire. I was completely wrong.
It was
Shadows of the Empire.
The big multimedia franchise event where you had books, you had comics, you had video games, you had soundtracks, you had everything imaginable.
Everything but
everything. It was great in terms of the way that they tackled it. Not everything worked. You had some terrible comics. I remember they had like a spin-off series with the Pamela Anderson-esque robot that was the assistant to Zizor. I will call him. Yeah. I call him Zizor. But I really enjoyed Steve Perry's book. I thought it was a great addition. The game was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, and this action figure looks just how you would expect it to look as well. Bearing in mind they've not got like a real life character to base it upon. This is based on an amalgamation of all the drawings and artwork that was produced at the time. But it is exactly how you would expect it to be. And I really do hope that this means that we're going to get the likes of Dash Rendar coming in the near future. That would be a really good figure to see. This, for me, Shadows of the Empire, if they decided to do this at Disney Plus, that would get some really good views. That would be the way to go for me. But yeah, this figure included some really good soft goods that are draped from the arms. The likeness is exactly what you would want from it, and that's going to sell like the proverbial hotcakes. That one.
$25 spring next year.
Yes, so you can pretty much guarantee that's about 30 quid. Yeah, but no, a nice figure. Now you probably know more about this character than I do.
Well, kind of. I've only tapped in a little bit to Jedi Survivor so far. I've been holding back playing it. I'm going to play it when we launch Fantha Arcade, our gaming stream, which will be coming very shortly when UPS deliver my parcel that's been sitting for a week. I'm going to tell the story because it's so terrible. Rather than deliver it to my house, I got it delivered to a UPS access point. And apparently, according to the UPS tracking, they couldn't find the UPS access point to deliver it to. Brilliant. And they also sent it in 2 parcels, this component that I need to start doing the streaming, because they're sending me a free hat, but they've sent that in a separate package. So I've got 2 packages, and I don't know which one is the one I actually want and what one is the rubbish free hat. So it's now going to get delivered to my house. I won't be in to sign for it, which means I'll take it to the depot. I'll get held at the depot. I'll have to drive 90 minutes to pick it up. Joy. So coming soon, Fantha Arcade. You'll hear me complain a lot on that show about UPS.
I'm most excited about seeing the hat.
Yeah, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to wear it next week. Just shame the companies involved. So UPS, you are my enemy at the moment. Please deliver my parcel. Anyway, if you've ordered these figures, you're gonna have to wait till spring next year. Tell us about it, Paul.
Yeah, I think most of these are spring next year, if not all of it. But as is the let's pre-order things, nature of things these days. So, but another double-bladed lightsaber user. I must admit, I'm not familiar with the character. When I first saw it, I thought it looked more like Colossus out of the Marvel stuff. But It's yeah, it's good. It's a good looking figure. It's cool.
High Republic-esque kind of era kind of clothing.
Yeah.
Well,
There you go. Now this is more us. Revenge of the Sith. So Clone Commander Bakara. Now I think I've got a version of him somewhere. I don't know what line it would have been from, but certainly not Black Series. But yeah, another spring 2025 release. And this is along with all the other Black Series figures that we've just been talking about in the new packaging. So they've decided to get rid of that awkward slant that they put on that they introduced on the boxes a while back, and they've gone for more of a square packaging again, which certainly sits better with me. Yeah, another cracking trooper. People that like to build armies of clones and clone commanders and troopers. Bob on for them, isn't it? And then we got this from the Clone Wars. A bit like you, Brian, I'm not a massive viewer of the animated Star Wars programs. I do recall seeing this character, but yeah, it's not one that I will jump up and around for joy for. But I'm sure it'll have its fans.
animation and droids, the two things I can't stand. So yeah, someone will probably gift me that one, I'm sure.
Yeah, Mr. Newbold sent you that one.
Yeah.
Now this is a nice entry. So we're on to like the vintage collection now. So we're done with the Black Series, the vintage collection, and this, to all intents and purposes, this is Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars. So this could have easily been released on a Clone Wars card, but it's from the World Between Worlds part of Ahsoka, and really nice likeness for the scale. And the card back's pretty nice too. They've used one of the scenes from Ahsoka, which I think they've said that they've cleaned the image up a bit because it was from a scene that was like a lot of layers of smoke and like red dust and whatever. So, but yeah, that's one that people will be absolutely stoked to see being released again.
It does look really.
2025. Sorry, bro.
It does look really nice. It does look nice.
It does, yeah. It's a really cool figure. And they've definitely got the articulation right on the arms so that these characters can wield the lightsaber with two hands now. Classic Clone Trooper. This figure has been released before, but not with the blue paintwork on it to give it a more standout look against the normal just white and black Clone Troopers. But yeah, it looks a bit chunky around the arms and legs to me, but it's probably okay. But yeah, another one that will be lapped up.
Putting on a little extra layer of fat for winter.
Oh dear. And then yeah, so we've got a figure from the much often maligned The Acolyte, one of the main characters that was oft in the first episode. Had they run it as the show should have run, rather than running it out of order, then the character would probably resonated better with people. But yeah, Jedi Master Indara, a nice looking representation of that figure. Yeah. And then we've got Ted Ramiro. Now, there's been some comments about this. Have they just basically built a new top half and put it on existing legs from a male counterpart? Because if you look, she does look quite a bit taller than you'd expect her to look. And there's a considerable gap there, shall we say, between one leg and the other. So whether or not they've retooled that from an existing figure, that's to be seen. But still, it's nice to finally see an action figure of Claire Henry, isn't it?
It is. We'll be getting it signed by Claire, I'm sure. Her host of Planet Leia, for those who don't know. And then
yes,
Connie.
And then we're back to the Black Series, and we're finally getting some quite decent versions of Luke and Leia. So Luke in what most people refer to as his farm boy outfit, and then get castigated for saying that. This is by far and away the best version that we've had of Luke Skywalker as an action figure. The likeness, they always say that doing Mark Hamill's likeness is a difficult one. But they've got pretty close on this one. They've done quite well. There's a number of things that you can customize regarding his utility belt.
It stands out there. It looks really nice. A lot of detail.
Yeah. I like the way that they've sort of separated away the soft goods. It's not soft good. It's still plastic, but there's that gap between the torso and the actual clothing, so that gives that extra illusion of fabric. I think the one thing that people have been saying about is the boots. I've seen a lot of comments about the boots saying that they don't look right at all, but they look okay. Maybe the colour's slightly off. But yeah, again, that figure will hold its lightsaber properly. You can take the binoculars off the belt. You can have the lightsaber hilt to the belt and all sorts. So yeah, that one is potentially one that I would like to purchase when we get to spring, because it is by heads and shoulders the best version of Luke. The one that I've got looks like he's wearing a bathrobe. So yeah, that looks good.
Does he come with a restraining bolt for droids?
No restraining bolt for droids that I'm aware of.
that Luke Skywalker I like is the one where he's treating droids how they should be treated. Get the restraining bolt.
Good old one. You and your droids. And again, we've got a cracking version of Princess Leia coming out as well. And this is probably, from the images that I've seen, the best version, the best likeness to Carrie Fisher that we've had. I love the way that the clothing sort of lies there. That's really good. And I believe it comes with an optional hood as well, so you can have her with hood up, hood down. Yeah, another fantastic addition to the Black Series.
I find the way that they introduced the character to be kind of odd. I don't know why, because it's all factual. Daughter of Padme and Anakin, sister of Luke. I just find it kind of weird. I don't think they need to do that. But having said that, Star Wars does do some weird things. I always remember them in one of the books having a birthday party for Leia. This is when you had kids, and Han was there, and our kids were there, and Luke was in it. And I'm just thinking it's also Luke's birthday. But there was no mention that it was Luke's birthday at all, and it was clearly being completely forgotten about by the writers for whatever reason. But yeah, they were all celebrating Leia's birthday, and poor Luke's just sitting in the corner, having a slice of cake, tear coming down his cheek.
Perhaps to make it extra special, we're going to celebrate his the next day. Oh dear, that's funny. And then, of course, they don't want to leave the vintage collection people out. There's a new version of Luke Skywalker there. If anything, I think the head sculpt on the vintage collection version, the way that the hair lies, looks better than it does on the Black Series one. So, but you know, let us know what you think.
They're calling it a droid collar.
He's got a what? Sorry,
a droid collar on his belt. But it's not a restraining bolt. It's the buzzer for the restraining bolt. It's not a droid collar.
It's not a droid collar.
Yeah, no. Too ethical. Just stun the droids.
It's like when you get to my age and you start sort of stumbling over your words because you can't remember exactly what you want to say. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's a droid collar. Stick it down as droid collar. That's fine. Yeah, I don't know what we mean.
Stop those droids before they run off.
Now, in honor of this, I've got my Jawa t-shirt on tonight. So for those of you who ordered the Cantina, which will be coming somewhere down the line, the Streets of Mos Eisley. Now that's it's a really clever idea. So you've got these 3 interchangeable panels, and you've got all these little boxes and crates that you can strew alongside it, and even like the pop-out droid that comes out of the wall, very much like the one at Jabba's palace, and that we saw in Mando as well. And you can reconfigure these any way you like. So if you bought 2 or 3 sets, you could make a really nice extended scene. And it comes with a unique Jawa. This packaging, it just basically looks like a slumped Jawa in the streets of Mos Eisley. It looks like he's a bit worse for wear. Probably been to the canteen.
Bar.
Yeah, didn't realise that at his size, half a pint's all right. You don't need a whole pint, mate. But yeah, he was a nice little addition to the pack. And of course, when they do these now, when they did the Tantive 4 one, you got, I think you got a Rebel Trooper with that one, didn't you? And when you got the carbon freezing chamber, you had a Stormtrooper. So that if you want to buy more than one set, you can sort of world build with the characters that they're putting into these boxes. That's a nice addition. And even if you're not buying the Cantina, a few of those on your shelf with some characters dotted around it will look absolutely fantastic. So it might be a budget way of taking part in this big Tatooine event that is currently being marketed by Hasbro.
You say budget, $60.
It's a lot cheaper than buying the Cantina. Yeah. And then, of course, we on the stream that was on the other day, we had Emily Swallow promoting the helmet for the armorer, and she looked absolutely she was delighted with it, wasn't she? She unboxed it. She was sort of like, she thought the box was amazing. She took the helmet out, stuck it on her head. She did comment that it was very lightweight, so I'm guessing that the version that she wears in Mandalorian is a lot heavier than this. But it's a lovely bit of kit. I mean, the insides, those electronics and all the padding that you would need, but the weathering on it from the outside looks spot on. What do you think of that one, Brian?
That's very nice. I'm actually quite impressed with some of the Black Series helmets that they've been doing.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they?
Yeah.
I wish I'd started collecting those, actually. That would have been probably better for shelf space than all the action figures I've got strewn around the office. But yeah, no, it's very nice, those. Yeah, I like that.
So that's us at the end of the Pulse Con reveals. If you had to buy one, Paul, have you got a favourite amongst them?
I think probably. Well, can I have 2? Can I have Luke and Leia Black Series? I think they both look brilliant.
Just the one.
Yeah, go on.
Can't have one. That's too much. More than your pocket money is.
Now, see, if you buy Luke and Leia, that doesn't look too bad. If I just put Leia on its own, it looks like I'm starting to collect Barbie dolls, and I don't want to go down that route. I'll have Luke. If I'm going to have the one, if that's all the pocket money you'll let me have, I'll have the one. I'll have Luke.
Yeah. I'll go with the drunk Jawa sitting in the street. One too many.
You're going to have all the plastic.
Next up in the news, Ewan McGregor's picked up his Walk of Fame star. There we can see him there. Hollywood seemed very, very proud. I actually enjoyed watching the ceremony. I don't often watch the ceremonies because I'm not into Lifetime Achievement Awards and all that kind of thing. I kind of it's not my cup of tea. It's kind of like, I don't know. And I've never really done the sort of intentionally done the Walk of Fame. I've passed by it, had a little look, never really sought anyone out. So not my cup of tea. But he was very, very proud. I thought he gave a really good speech. Hayden Christensen did a great speech for him as well. He kind of talked about how Ewan kind of took him under his arm for Attack of the Clones and made him feel like he was his best friend from day one. And I think they've grown up to become very, very good friends in real life as well.
Yeah, I think, they treat each other as brothers. They probably don't see each other for very long periods of time, but when they do get back together, they appreciate each other. It was nice as well to see that the Star Wars connection was being honoured to the extent it was by having Hayden there, because obviously Ewan's bringing loads of different things. But yeah, Star Wars was clearly higher on the list of his accolades.
And apparently he's physically very close to Carrie Fisher's star as well.
Is it? Right. No, I didn't know that. Yeah, when I was over there the other year, I did see Carrie's. I think I'm right in saying I think I was the first Fanta that had a picture taken by the Mark Hamill one, because that came out relatively late in Mark's career. Ewan, he hasn't had to wait too long, really. 30 years in, and he's managed to get one, so he's done okay. But yeah, it's an interesting place to go to if you do want to sort of like have a wander around and see who you can see in star form. But like I said on a previous show, there's people there that have been, they were huge stars in their day, that their names mean absolutely nothing to us. Which is quite sad, really.
3,000 stars now.
You're sorry?
There's close to 3,000 stars in the Walk of Fame now.
Is there really? Wow. They're going to have to start moving it up the road a bit, aren't they?
They could, if we could have it in this country, we could use them to fill the potholes.
Well, I'm sure we've got a similar thing over in Birmingham, haven't we? We've got Ozzy Osbourne there and various other people that have famous in the Birmingham area. Probably got one for Jasper Carrot.
Run out idea. We'll get to 5. Do they have one for Spudman?
Not yet, but I'm sure they will have.
Yeah.
I need to go and do that. I need to go and see Spudman.
I've dropped the hint many times to Mr. Newbold, who I believe is quite close to to Spudman, and he's been there himself.
He doesn't speak on. No. Well, maybe me and Mark will go along and see if we can interview him and see if he's a Star Wars fan.
Yeah,
I'm sure we probably.
Next episode of Start Your Engines. Find out what kind of engine drives this Spudmobile.
So the next episode, Start Your Engines, is going to be a baked potato wagon.
Yeah. If you don't know who Spudman is, he literally makes baked potatoes on TikTok and sells them from a wagon in the middle of a little town in the middle of England. Very entertaining.
Brilliant.
One of the interesting things that Ewan said during his promotion for the Hollywood Walk of Fame was in relation to the character Obi-Wan Kenobi and whether he would ever return to it. And he said he hopes to get a chance to do another one. There's plenty to be told between where his Disney Plus series finished off and where Alex Guinness comes to screen with Luke Skywalker. Yeah. So he's given it some thought. Hayden Christensen kind of hinted that he would be up for it as well, but he's to be more excited just to see Ewan play Obi-Wan again.
Well, I think we're likely to see Hayden again in Ahsoka Season 2, aren't we? Because he figured quite a bit in that, and I think he was in the final shot of that Season 1 as well. So that would be good. Whether we'll see the two of them together again, I don't know. But yeah, certainly the prospect of more Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Darth Vader to kill Ahsoka in Ahsoka Season 2.
Now, come on.
At some point.
Is Darth Vader still around? When is Ahsoka set?
It's set round about the same time as the Mandalorian series.
It is, isn't it? So
you kill her off at some point. Otherwise, she's the rudest Jedi ever because she's never come to help any of the Rebel Alliance throughout the entirety of that conflict.
Oh no, I think do we not hear her voice at the end of The Rise of Skywalker? So she's dead. Dead by now.
Dead. Kill her off, everyone. Won't see her dead. Paul, next up we've got Jabba's Court. Do I head over to Jabba's Court?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I love that entry.
Yes.
Jabba's Court, purely because you've got the droid there stretched out being tortured That's how every court case should end in Jabba's.
You haven't got the T-shirt on, have you? Have you got the T-shirt?
I've got the. I have got the. Don't know if you can quite see that. Torture and droids.
Droid torturer. Okay, so Jabba's court this week. We're looking at whether or not deceased actors should be resurrected for the TV shows and for the films. Now, obviously, this is something that is in the news at the moment because of the ongoing dispute about the use of Peter Cushing's likeness in Rogue One. Although why they've waited till now to debate this is beyond me. I was under the impression, Brian, that the estate were approached at the time and everything was given the thumbs up.
So I did a deep dive into it this week on fathertracks.com. If you hit the link in the show notes, because so much of the press reporting this week was so wildly wrong. It was embarrassing, and like one credible outlet gets it badly wrong and everybody just falls in line and repeats.
There's no research. Yeah.
This court case has been going on since 2019, so sort of 3 years after Rogue One came out. And it's only really got into the headlines now is because it's finally reached the High Court in England after numerous cases and appeals. Basically, you've got 5 defendants in the case. You've got the Broughtons, who were the husband and wife who were effectively running the estate for Peter Cushing, two of Peter Cushing's friends, and one of them was an employee. Sadly, both have deceased since the case started because they were in their 80s, similar age to Peter. You've got his agent. You've got Lunac Heavy Industries, who was the production company set up for Rogue One. You've got Lucasfilm, and you had a 6th defendant, which was the Walt Disney Company. They've been removed from the case. So really, the most recent incident that's gone to the High Court has been Lucasfilm and Lunac Heavy Industries trying to get the judge to just dismiss it without going to trial on the basis that they had a signed agreement from 1976 from the original Star Wars film that they feel gave them rights to do what they did for Rogue One. And they also signed an agreement with the Broughtons in February 2016 ahead of the release of Rogue One to give them rights as well to do what they did with the likeness of Peter Cushing. The argument from the Mr. Francis, who claims that he has the rights, complicated, but effectively he was making a TV movie with Peter Cushing. He was a very good friend of Peter Cushing. They'd worked on a number of movies together over time, and Peter Cushing had cancer at the time they were making that TV movie. There was a clause added to the contract which basically allowed them to complete the movie, the TV movie, if Peter Cushing passed away, using digital techniques. And it also mentioned that that if the movie wasn't completed, that none of what they'd provided in terms of the ability to complete a film with a digital likeness of Peter Cushing could be used for any production. Anyway, fast forward, complicated. The TV movie never got completed, and thus, according to Mr. Francis, who's bringing the case, that means that nobody can use the likeness of Peter Cushing, even with his estate's permission, without him also providing permission, because he's got a clause basically that says he has a ability to say no. So the estate could give permission, then it's supposed to go to Mr. Francis and he can say yes or no. He's got the ability to deny, basically. The whole argument, as I see it, would be when Peter Cushing signed this agreement to make this TV movie, was he intending that his likeness never be used on any production ever again? Or was he really just saying, well, if you've got my likeness to finish this movie, if I pass away and you end up not finishing the movie, I don't want you using it somewhere else. And I think that's where it kind of falls into, if that makes sense.
That's the most comprehensive telling of that tale I've heard. So that's interesting that it goes as far back as potentially 1976 to around the film.
So back then, obviously, Peter Cushing was of an older age, even back then. And so they added clauses as to, how they could use footage in future projects as well. And it's a very, I've on fantatracks.com, we've got the whole wording, so you can read it for yourself. But effectively, it's a very open, and the judge admits that it's a very open clause as to we can use your likeness, we can manipulate it, we can do what we want with it on other projects, effectively. And the argument would be, from that perspective, Star Wars, George Lucas, both very innovative people. So even though back in 1976 you weren't aware of what would be happening in 2016, you knew you were working with someone who was pushing the boundaries of what film can do. You're working on a production that was pushing the boundaries of what film can do. Yeah. Perhaps when you signed that contract back then, you had some idea as to what they may be able to do.
Well, even for that TV movie to be sort of talking about digital, changes that could be made in the future. I mean, Peter Cushing died quite some time ago, so digital techniques would have been very much limited.
93, they were making the movie. I think Peter Cushing died in 1994.
Yeah. And so digital stuff was only really started to, it was in its infancy really around then, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think it was more a ways that if you pass away before we finish this movie, we're able to do things in order to allow us to finish the movie.
Yeah, we'll freeze it, and then we might wait sort of 10 years for technology to catch up and then release it with you digitally.
My whole argument would be, and with the utmost respect to Mr. Francis, because undoubtedly he was a friend to Peter Cushing. He did the Channel 4 documentary on Peter Cushing that came out in, I think, 1989. So they were very good friends. But my whole point would be that based on the clause that's in the contract, if Mr. Francis had finished his film and released it, there was no clause preventing any other company entering an agreement with the estate and using the likeness of Peter Cushing. So if Peter Cushing had intended to prevent anybody else using his likeness in a future production, signing what he signed doesn't achieve that, because it was all based on whether the TV movie got made or not. If the TV movie got made, then all the rights fall back to the estate. If the TV movie didn't get made, then the production company on the TV movie retained rights over everybody else's production. That doesn't make sense to me.
I suppose, though, what we're really talking about here, though, is regardless of whether it was the correct thing to do from the production point of view, ethically, is it something that we should do anyway? Princess Leia was added in at the end of Rogue One, and it worked to a certain extent. The technology is still not quite right. There's something, the eyes don't convey enough life, and the mouth seemed a bit off. But again, it was still nice to see that nod towards Carrie Fisher and the character of Princess Leia. The introduction of a de-aged Mark Hamill at the end of the second season of The Mandalorian was pretty much universally joyously received, wasn't it? You see all these clips of people watching it in, grown men in tears, watching it, thinking it was like the best bit of Star Wars ever. And for many people, it was redemption for the character after how he was treated in the sequel trilogy. Different people have different views on that. but that's with an actor that is still very much alive and with us, and we can get their permission to do that. So if Mark Hamill says, yeah, sure, do that, he's in a position to be able to say, yeah, that's great. When it comes down to an estate and their decision, and then if that decision is then taken as being for wider use than perhaps it was intended, that's when you're going to get problems like you got with Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
But from an ethical point of view, from actually sort of resurrecting these people, these actors in different roles, be it Star Wars or whatever, as a person that grew up on the original trilogy, and going back to what we were talking about earlier about the potential recasting of the three main characters and Darth Vader as well, of course, it's a fine line between trying to hold on to these people if the technology is there to do it, or recasting. I would probably lean more towards recasting as time goes by, because it must be absolutely so time consuming trying to put these people into the films and TV. I'm sure it's a lot quicker than it used to be, but still, it probably very much limits what you can do with that character. You could see the struggles they had with the Rise of Skywalker, with Carrie passing away. So that was an example. Carrie had long since passed away. She passed away before The Last Jedi came out, although she'd filmed all the scenes for that. But when we come to The Rise of Skywalker, they've repurposed stuff that they didn't use in The Last Jedi, and were somewhat restricted on what they could do. What's your thoughts? Would you rather see recasting, or are you happy to see these digital things?
I think if you've got permission of the estate, you have to go with the presumption that estate know what that actor or that individual would have wanted, and the estate aren't just looking to make money from it. There's always going to be perhaps a dubious question over that. And really, I think now, if you're an actor in that industry, you need a clear instruction. So it's got to be part of your will, your instruction to who's going to be in charge of your estate, basically. I think also you need it to be contractually clear if you're being scanned for a production, what happens to that scan when the production's finished. All these things need to be factored in, and I think California are starting to get on top of it a little bit, but obviously Star Wars is really getting primarily made in the UK. We're not really bringing in any kind of legislation with regards to this. So you kind of need some kind of global industry standards brought in, because otherwise it's going to differ from country to country. It's going to depend where films are made, and it gets complicated. So if you're an actor, you might think, well, I know what my rights are, but you made the film in Ireland, and the rights in Ireland are different from everywhere else. So, I don't know. I can see why it makes sense in certain circumstances. I think for me, it's okay if you're doing it for something very minor. I think if you're trying to do it to create a fully fledged character in a movie, I think if you're doing it for one scene, because that actor's passed away and you need that actor in that scene in a future sequel, for example, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I think there needs to be better rules around it. There needs to be a proper industry approach to it. Going back to the Peter Cushing example, I think his instruction very unclear, based on if the film got made, the TV movie got made, then it was fair game for the estate to enter whatever agreement it was. If the TV movie didn't get made, why did Kevin Francis get all the rights? That doesn't make sense to me in the whole thing. And if you're Lucasfilm and you approach the estate and you get permission from the estate, you presume everything's okay because you're not aware that the estate has signed an agreement with another producer. That's impossible for you to know. So from Lucasfilm's perspective, I don't think Lucasfilm have done anything wrong in this case. Reading the latest verdict to the judge, I think the judge is pretty clear that Lucasfilm are ultimately going to win this case. But based on the fact it's an issue of fact, it has to go to trial. It's not one that can have a summary judgment issued on it. So I think the fact that the case is continuing is kind of irrelevant. I think it's pretty much given that Lucasfilm are going to be perceived to be in the right, because they're covered in sort of two different grounds.
Do you think that there's a likelihood that, and it's probably already been constructed at this stage, do you think there's a likelihood of Tarkin turning up in Andor Season 2?
I think there is. I think there's a really good chance of that. And in terms of this case, the whole query is, did Lucasfilm unjustly enrich itself by using him? But they've paid a fee to the estate, so they've paid a cost in order to be allowed to use him. So it's really difficult to say they've unjustly benefited. The only thing holding them back from being in Andor Season 2 is obviously they've got this case ongoing. They would have to go back to the estate, get permission to use him in Andor, which would also require permission from Kevin Francis until it's very clear that permission isn't needed from him. So I don't know whether Lucasfilm would take that risk whilst an ongoing case is ongoing to bring Tarkin.
That's what I was thinking
too. Probably they won't, is what I'm thinking. And I think that's probably why you're bringing Orson Krennic back in, because he kind of can be that sort of middleman.
Yeah. It's a shame, because if they had intended to use the character and that this has stopped that from happening, that would be a shame.
Yeah,
I don't think
it would stop them. It would stop them, because I think the one thing you don't do is poke the bear during a trial. Really?
Absolutely. But yeah, I don't think that the addition of Grand Moff Tarkin would have had any impact on the success of Rogue One. It was purely a nice nod to Peter Cushing and a nice nod to the original trilogy for the fans. So we'll wait and see. You never know.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to follow. And it's a complicated one, and we spoke about it as well, about James Earl Jones and his voice being used in Obi-Wan. I think there's good ways the technology can be used to bring people back, and I think there's bad ways, and I think you can't leave it for individual productions to decide what's right, what's wrong. You need, whether that's contractually through the various unions, or you need some kind of global approach to the whole issue.
Definitely.
And ultimately, I think the actors need to be clear as to what their instruction is. Once they're gone, and there's no wiggle room moving away from that. If an actor says nope, it can never be used, that's it, final.
Yeah, it should ultimately come down to the permission or the opposite of, down to the actual actor themselves. Absolutely.
I think that's it for this week's Jabba's Court. Jabba's Court's part of Good Morning Tatooine, part of our weekly recap of everything Star Wars every Sunday night at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and also released as an individual video on Factor Tracks TV every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And Paul, we've got one last news item to cover, which is one of my favourite things, which is Roosevelt shirts. I'm wearing lovely Phantom Menace one just now, and they've just announced their spooky Star Wars collection just in time for Halloween. And we can check out some of the shirts right now. Up first, It's a Treat and Carved Wars, two very much Halloween-inspired ones, available for men, women, youths, and preschoolers. You've also got Day of the Dark Side, and my personal favourite from this collection, Star Wars The High Ground, fantastic little polo shirt showing the Revenge of the Sith lava battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Nice. Is that is a polo shirt? Is it that one?
It is, yeah, it is.
Very nice.
You can also get a Trooper Drip Star Wars t-shirt, a bandana, not so common in the UK, very much an American thing, I think, and the Star Wars logo drip baseball hat as well. Anything in there take your fancy, Paul?
Well, I'm guessing that you're going to go for the higher ground polo, so I'm going to get the bandana. And I'm going to get 2 of them and stick it around the dogs' collars. There you go. We tend to put them around the dogs' necks in the UK, not on our heads like they do in the States. So yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is all of this week's news, Paul. It's been fantastic to cover the news again this week.
A busy week, yeah. Plenty going on.
And of course, everybody can keep on top of everything that's happening in Star Wars and Lucasfilm by heading to panthertracks.com. You'll get all the Star Wars news every single day, interviews, event coverage, podcasts, and reviews.
You can find us on all your socials, so that's Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X or Twitter, and TikTok. And don't forget, Panther Tracks Radio, we broadcast new content every week on a rotating basis. So, for example, you've got the Panther from Down Under there. You've got Desert Planet Discs with our friend Carl. And there's something for everyone. You can get that on all your usual platforms. So Amazon Music, etc. You can see all the different types of podcast platforms there.
And of course, you've been watching Father Tracks TV, Good Morning Tatooine. You've seen some of the segments, like Jabba's Court will be out every Wednesday. Our other regular features also going up on Father Tracks TV. And watch out soon for our upcoming Panther Arcade regular live stream gaming. Paul, thank you for joining me again this week on Good Morning Tatooine. It's been great covering it all. It's been a lot to get through this week. And
we've done all right.
It's been great fun. And we'll be back next Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York. And stay safe, everyone. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on panthertracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Panther Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Panther Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.